Good morning and welcome families to the Orange County Public Schools November Parent Academy. I am Leanne Bradshaw, Associate Superintendent for Professional Learning. Our department is home to the Parent and Family Engagement Team and the hosts of the Parent Academy and Engage 360 Family Partnership Link to Learning sessions. The Professional Learning Department has a strategic focus on empowering, engaging, and educating families and caregivers by providing high-quality training sessions and resources for parents. I would like to share also that OCPS's vision is to ensure every student has a promising and successful future. So we are excited that you have joined us on our journey this morning. At this time, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Kathy Schuler, our Chief Academic Officer. In 2013, Dr. Schuler led Superintendent Jenkins' initiative to launch the district's first Parent Academy, supporting parent advocacy and learning district-wide. She believes that all children have untapped potential and can achieve at enormous heights where there is effective leadership, instruction, parental involvement, and community engagement. Here is a special greeting to you from Dr. Schuler.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Schuler. We appreciate your support and guidance for this important work. Families, caregivers, and community partners, research indicates that parent and community ties can have systemic and sustained effects on learning outcomes for children and on whole school improvement. We would like to thank you again for joining us today for our first Parent Academy of the year, focusing on social emotional learning as a foundation for student success. The structure for our morning will start with a keynote speaker, followed by 2 breakout sessions that you selected. Refer to the email you received last night for the links to the breakout sessions. Now, I would like to welcome our keynote speaker, Ms. Krista Lay. Ms. Lay is the founder of Resonance Educational Consulting and began her career 23 years ago as a high school social studies teacher and curriculum coach. In 2012, she was one of 26 educators in the country selected as an ASCD Emerging Leader. Over the past 10 years, Ms. Lay has worked with educators in more than 25 states on creating sustainable, scalable, social-emotional learning systems and learning communities. At this time, I welcome Ms. Lay as she shares a special session focusing on supporting our children to thrive and specific ways to foster the development of these skills at home. Welcome, Ms. Lay.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. I am incredibly excited to have an opportunity to work and to share some of my experiences As an educator, a former high school teacher focusing on social emotional learning, but also as a mom of 3 boys who are now 20 years old, almost 17, and almost 16. What I found through the years is that focusing on social emotional learning not only helped me become a better educator, but a better mom and a better parent for my boys. When I explicitly focused on building these social emotional learning skills, it allowed my boys to also be able to develop those skills. So during our time together, my hope is to be able to introduce you to what social emotional learning is, to share a little bit of some stories that I've had with my children. And I encourage you to please use the chat. Feel free to type back to me. If there is anything that I share in a story that resonates with you, please let me know and type "that's me" into the chat, because we know that parenting is hard. And it is very fruitful. And so it's also just nice to know that there are other people out there who have had experiences like we have as well. And so to start off, I am going to ask you to put an answer into the chat. And the first question I have for you is, what is your greatest hope for your children? If you think about everything that we do to support our children and to help them thrive, for you, what is the most important thing? And thank you. Please make sure that you select everyone when posting so that we can all read each other's responses. So I'm seeing my greatest hope is that they are content with their lives, for them to be successful. And I love that, Karina, to stay in tune with their morals, their core values, to learn enough to be able to be a functioning, effective member of society, healthy mind, body, and spirit. Yet, I love this too, to be a creative problem solver who knows how to cope, to be healthy and happy, to find their own definition of happiness. And I really enjoy that, Betsy, because we all have our own hopes and dreams for our kids, and we want them to be successful. And there's a point where we want our students or our children to flourish and to find their own success, to live up to their potential, to be a light in the world. And for me, when I think about having 3 boys, I want to put 3 healthy, emotionally adjusted and sound men out into the world who do good. I believe that what you put out comes back to you, and I want them to live a very prosperous life, to be their best selves and to be productive and happy and to find that for themselves. So thank you so much for taking an opportunity. And there will be other questions throughout our time together where I'll ask you to type that into the chat. So when we think about how do we get there, how do we help our children become happy and successful, to realize their potential, to find their core values and morals, to be able to be problem solvers and decision makers, and to be able to cope, we really want to make sure that we know what skills are foundational. And you may have heard of the term social emotional learning, and it often gets shortened to the acronym SEL. And so that's the acronym that I'll be using as we talk today. And usually when we say, well, what is SEL? People will say it is relationship building. It is about building a strong rapport with your children, or as teachers, with your students and with each other. But I want to help expand that definition of SEL, because there are actually 5 different pieces that go into helping our students become healthy, well-adjusted, responsible decision makers who are productive members of society. And the first 2 that you see here in blue and in yellow come back to self-awareness and self-management. It is all about who they are. And we believe that when our children have a strong sense of their identity, their strengths, their gifts, and know how to communicate that effectively to the world and to set goals, that allows them to become better at building healthy, transparent, respectful relationships with other people. And that's what you see there in the orange and in the green with social awareness and relationship skills. All four of those areas, those competencies come together to allow our children to be responsible decision makers. This is where we want them to be able to sort through information, make informed and reasoned judgments, and make decisions that are going to be what's best for them and best for the world around them. So a little bit more specifically, and the stories that I share today are going to be wrapped around these 5 pieces. And when we look at self-awareness, there are actually 3 different parts of becoming self-aware. And when we know what these parts are, it allows us to work on them explicitly with our children and be able to grow and develop and model that for them. So the first is recognizing our emotions. What are we feeling? Number 2, knowing our identities, our strengths, our assets. And then 3, being able to believe that we can be successful, to know that with some work, with some perseverance, we can work towards achieving our goals. Under self-management, oftentimes we think about how do we cope with the stresses of our lives? How do we manage that? How do we communicate our emotions? But it's also about how do we set and achieve goals? Thank you so much for that amen in there. It's letting me know that you're with me here. And so when we work on developing those pieces with our students, I keep saying students, our children, it allows us then to help them form really healthy, productive relationships with each other. And so social awareness really focuses on this word empathy, which you might be hearing a lot about, but I have to tell you, it is a really complex skill. And so when we're talking about empathy, it's not just saying, oh, I feel for you. I feel bad for you. I understand, but it's actually being with somebody and understanding the emotions that they're feeling. One of the things too that we talk about in social awareness is the idea that sometimes our students' behaviors are a result of what is happening around them, our children's behaviors, that they're not necessarily doing it because it all comes from within, but what could be happening outside around them. In relationship skills, we're looking at how do we build those relationships? How do we help them become healthy? And so we're looking at how do we communicate? How do we listen effectively? But also understand that not everything is going to be smooth and easy, that we do experience conflict and that conflict is okay. And how do we navigate that? And then lastly, in responsible decision making, it's how do we stay curious and foster that curiosity? How do we help them become problem solvers? And then how do we help them make those decisions that will be best for everybody? What I'd like to ask you to consider next is as we think about our children, and oh, thank you for that the slides are a little bit blurry. We are going to be going a little bit more in depth, so you'll see some of those in a little bit larger. Also, there's a poll here, and so if Alina could mind pulling that up, I'm curious to see what ages your children are, what building levels they're in. So if you could select this, please. And let us know, are your children in preschool, kindergarten to second? Yep, feel free to put it in the chat, or you can click on the poll at the bottom. You can click as many as necessary. And as we work on that, when Alina feels that we've got everybody who has participated, she'll show the results. And what I've done is picked different stories that we can share that talk about each of those SEL skills at different levels as I've experienced them with my children. And so, oh, thank you for that. So it's not allowing to select 2 options. That's okay. Feel free to put them in the chat as well. And we're going to start off here with recognizing emotions. And don't forget, if there's something that resonates with you in this story, put in, that's me. So I mentioned to you that I have 3 boys. This is my second son. His name is Jared. And this is a picture of him in our first time camping when he was in 1st grade. Jared is one of these boys who wears his emotions on his sleeve, but he is very hesitant and very cautious. He loves school and is usually happy and upbeat. But one day he came home from school and he was sitting on the couch and he was really grumpy looking. And I'm like, Jared, what's going on? And he said, I had these emotions today. My body didn't feel right. And as a mom, I'm like, ooh, what's happening here? But as an SEL educator, I was so excited because he was noticing that there was something different happening in his body. I said, tell me more about that. I wanted to know more about how he was feeling. And he said, my arms and legs were all tingly and my stomach was rolling over. And I thought, this is good that he's recognizing something is different. And he said, I was overheated today in school. And I had a smile inside because I had never heard him use this part. And so that sense of being overheated was his way of saying that he was anxious and he had pins and needles and his stomach was flopping around. And so this is what we want our students to be able to do, to recognize when they're experiencing something a little bit different, and to be able to articulate that. And that's hard. And I love here, Angelica, in the chat, that you said, my daughter asked why I'm attending and to be a better mom. And that's what I want too. And so, and that's so sweet that she's like, you already are. And we are, and we can I'm always learning how I can become better, a better mom, a better educator, a better person. And I want to be able to model this for my boys too. And because they're watching everything we do. And so you just being here showed your daughter how important it is to have that growth mindset and that we want to constantly strive for more. And so I said to Jared here, we want to be able to help. I love your word overheated. And in fact, in 5th grade, in 6th grade, 7th grade, he still uses that word, I'm overheated, to express when he's upset. And so how can we help them develop the words that they need to help explain how they feel and not be afraid to say, this is how I feel? And how can we validate that? So here is a picture of my oldest son when he was very little. He is now 20. His name is Ethan. And unlike Jared, so Jared would know what emotions he was feeling. And when I said to him, what did you do when you were overheated? He's like, I put my head down on my desk and I breathed in really deep. And I'm like, yes, this is what we need. And so Ethan, on the other hand, he had a hard time managing his emotions. When he felt a big emotion, he had all this energy and all this enthusiasm, and it would often cause him to have to get up and to move around a lot. Or when it was an uncomfortable emotion, he would break down and start to cry. And so it was really hard for me to be able to talk to Ethan about his emotions when he was in the middle of a meltdown. And so please, if you have had your children have meltdowns, please put that to me in the chat, because we're going to talk about what do we do during these times. This is a skill set on how do we help our kids manage those emotions. Yeah, many meltdowns. And it lasted for such a long period of time, to the point that I would pick Ethan up from preschool and he'd come bounding out and he's like, I had a great day, Mom. And I'm like, that's so awesome. And then I got the little report from the teacher. And if you've ever seen Morgan Freeman movies, you hear his voice over, and I could hear it. It was not a good day. So even though Ethan was like, yes, this is awesome, I'm looking and there's an unhappy face from the teacher. And so I'm like, Ethan, what happened? What's going on here? And so I needed to help him find a constructive way to be able to manage those emotions, those big emotions. I wanted him to know it's okay to have those emotions, but what do we do when we're feeling them? Because oftentimes kids have a complete meltdown. They're crying, they're screaming, they're running around, or they completely withdraw. And they need us to be able to guide them. And so what I found actually ties into another skill of empathy. And if you remember earlier, we talked about empathy. You might not have experienced the same event that other people have, but can you relate to that emotion? And I have to tell you, I want to have meltdowns too. There are times when I am stressed and I am overwhelmed, and I know what it feels like. And so what can I do to help Ethan understand how to manage those big emotions? I'll tell you, I tried everything in the parenting books, and you'll see in the next slide. What I found worked for him was not to talk through it like what worked with Jared, but with Ethan, when he was in the middle of a meltdown, it was holding him. It was that body contact. It was breathing slowly with him. It was trying not to fix it for him, but to help him understand how to calm his body down. And in fact, Harvard Medical School says that we need 6 to 10 healthy, respectful touches a day in order to survive. And so that physical touch is so incredibly important. So here's our next poll, because I mentioned to you that I read every parenting book I could in order to help my children. I wanted to be a better mom, and I felt like I was failing, and even knowing about social emotional learning. So they told me, put him in a chair, a timeout chair. They said, put him in the corner so he can calm down. They said, put them on the steps so they have some alone time. So if you have a moment, please put in which of those worked for you. And I'm going to go back through the chats because I'm seeing you say like touch is so important for children that are not regulated. Absolutely. We want to be able to connect with our children, and giving them a hug or rubbing on their arm, or I used to give them back rubs until they calmed down. That's what worked for them. Yeah. Okay. So none is an option for you. I'm saying that none of those worked for you. And I have to tell you, none of them worked for me either. I had boys that when I put them in the timeout chair, Ethan would all of a sudden have a limp body and slide right off the chair onto the floor. Or and the timeout for in the corner, he'd be dancing. And so here's a question: what do you do when they're teenagers? And so this was a really important piece, because I have always told the boys from when they were younger that if I can help you learn how to manage those emotions and you make better choices, you get more opportunities to do things you want to do. And so there you go. I'm seeing that sometimes in school, there's only one approach. And so we need the schools and the families to be working together, because not every way of responding to behavior is going to work for every child. And I'm seeing that for some of you here, it didn't work for your children. And here, I love that, Henrique, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly, screen time or cell phone uses. And that is what I used to do, because I paid for my children's cell phone, and I would monitor that. I could set the time that they had on it. I could set how much data they were using. And I said to them, I need you to be making good decisions and managing those emotions. And when you can show me that you're doing that, you get to have more benefits, more opportunities. And so understanding here that we want them to be able to grow in these skill sets, and that when they're able to manage those, and it's not going to be perfect right away, it does take time, but we need to let them know that we're setting healthy boundaries for them so that they can grow in those skill sets. Yeah, and so far what I see, there's an authoritarian approach. And that to me was that, like, sit in the timeout and think about things. Well, they were too little to think, and they were too little to comprehend what was happening. You know what did work for me when they were younger, even when they got to be older, is that I didn't have toys in their bedroom, but we did have books. So if they woke up early in the morning, they could relax, they could read their books. What timeouts ended up looking like for me in my family is that I asked the boys that you're not making good decisions right now. I'm not happy with the choices that you're making. I need you to go up into your room, reflect, calm yourself down, come back when we're able to have a conversation. You can lay on your bed, you can read a book, but we need to find a coping strategy for you and a time for you to calm and reflect on what you're thinking. And let's come back and talk about it again. Now, please know that we're not done with the being able to manage those emotions, but I wanted to talk to you about some of the other pieces in social emotional learning as well. One of the newer pieces under self-awareness is knowing who you are and what you stand for, and knowing your strengths. So I mentioned that I have 3 boys, and this is my bonus son, Julian. He is almost 16, and we have been in each other's lives for 6.5 years so far. So we have been together since he was 9. Well, Julian's mom is from Mexico and his dad is Italian. And so he often says to me, he went to school in the suburbs of Philadelphia, the city of Philadelphia, excuse me, and then he moved out into the suburbs. There's a lot of time he spends 50% of the time with his mom and 50% of the time with his dad, who I'm married to. And we get to have a lot of car time. And it's a great opportunity for us to talk to them about life, about friends, social events. And Julian and I often talk about identity because he is one of the non-white kids in his school. So where he goes to school is predominantly white, but he is one of the non-white kids. And he'll say to me, Krista, I am a brown boy, and in the summertime, I get even more brown. And we talk about that, but he's recognizing who he is and how he fits in with the group. And he does have friends who are white, but he also has quite a number of friends who are non-white, and they can learn together and they have some of the same experiences. But some of the assets that come with Julian's ethnicity and his identities is that he speaks English, Spanish, and Italian. So Spanish from his mom, Italian from his dad, and English from both of them. And this is definitely a skill that we want to foster within our students. I know that there are some of you who are on here who are listening to this in Spanish and in Portuguese and in other languages, and that is beautiful. And let's foster that within our children. So I'd like you to think about, and you can put this into the chat, if you had to identify some strengths for your children, what are those strengths? I'm going to keep moving through, but I want you to really pinpoint what are some of those great pieces where, I'm sorry, I'm reading the chat here, those great pieces where you know this is a strength and you can reinforce it with your children. And I'm seeing a question there about, yes, do any parents encounter a situation where their children did not understand their emotions? And I'm so glad that you brought that up, Zachary, excuse me, because in the next session, I'm going to give you some strategies and resources that you can use that can help you work with your children on being able to identify those emotions. So I'm saying makes friends easily, is very loving, has a good work ethic. And so last night I was talking to my 17-year-old Jared, who is now a junior, and he was talking to me about how he wasn't doing well with a writing assignment and how even after 3 revisions, he brought his grade up from a 70 to an 80. And he's like, I just feel like I'm not understanding this concept of rhetorical analysis. And he said, I'm asking her if I can do it again and turn it in. He's like, I know I'm not going to get any points for it, but I really want to see if I can understand what she's trying to teach me. And I was like, I'm really proud of you for doing that, because not everybody is able to say, like, I'm going to keep working on this assignment, even though I'm not going to get points for it, because I want to try to understand. So I am loving all of these things that you're putting in the chat. And my question to you is, when was the last time you let your child know the strengths that you're seeing? And honor that. Let them know that you notice those things. Let's leverage the strengths that they have. When we're talking too about the strengths that they have, there's another piece here that I wanted to mention to you, and that is under social awareness. So who you see here are my niece and my nephew, Jimmy and Allie. What I didn't mention yet is that my family is also multi-ethnic. So my dad is German and my mom is Mexican. And my brother's wife is also from Mexico. So we have a lot of multilingual people in my family. And my niece and my nephew were raised bilingual from birth, and they spend quite a bit of time in Mexico, but also time up here in Pennsylvania. They realized, and this really hurt my heart, is that Allie will not speak, she's in 1st grade, she will not speak Spanish at home anymore. And I don't think it's something that's happening from within her, but there's something happening in school with her friends where she is not comfortable speaking. And when we talk together, she'll often see dolls or Barbies that are fair skinned and have blonde hair. And she's like, I want to look like that. And I'm like, no, you are beautiful the way you are. And for her birthday, she wanted a Moana doll. So I bought her the Moana doll because it looks like her. And so how can we help our students, our children, realize that there are societal pressures that are shifting their identity? And how can we reinforce the strengths that we're seeing in them. I saw so many of you put in the chat that your children are curious, and we need to foster that curiosity, because over time, our children start to think, oh, I just need to memorize what is being told to me. And so Ethan, when he was in, I think it was 5th grade, came home with a math problem. And he said, this isn't due until the end of the week, but I have been working on it and working on it and working on it, and I'm struggling. And he said, can you help me? And let me tell you, friends, the mom in me was like, yes, let me solve your problem for you. And I thought, no, I need to back off and let him be curious. And I said, it's okay. Put it away. You can come back to it again tomorrow. And he did put it away. He came back down the next day and he's like, Mom, I'm really frustrated. I can't seem to figure this out. I need your help. And the mom in me again wanted to do it, but I'm like, nope, nope. I said, Ethan, you have one more day. Put it away and come back down again. By this point, his paper had been erased. There were holes in it. And I honestly felt like a bad mom. I'm like, I should be helping him. I should be supporting him. But let me tell you, the next day I was cooking dinner and he came down hooting and hollering and yay, woohoo. I'm like, what is happening? He goes, I figured it out. I solved the problem. My heart just exploded. And I realized that if on that first day and then on that second day, I had interceded and tried to help him, he would not have owned that success. He would not have seen the value of his curiosity. And so even though we want to help our children, we have to know when it's okay to have what is called in learning a productive struggle. And that's part of having a growth mindset. It's okay to not find things easy. It's okay to see that something's complicated. And as a parent, how can we let our kids know that we feel what you're feeling? I understand this is hard and it's frustrating, but this is what's helping to grow your brain. This is what's going to make you smarter. This is perseverance. This is persistence. This is character building. And it's not that I don't want to help you, but it's just that I know you can do this. And so I see the question in your, how do you motivate a teen not to give up? I think it's really important, and we'll talk about this in the next session, to set small goals that lead to the bigger goal. So having them understand that they don't just try one time and they're going to have success, but how do we measure those little successes along the way and honor those so at every step of the journey, they know they're moving closer. And that they know that part of the journey is being stuck, but that's what makes us smarter and stronger. And so thank you for putting in those me toos, because we're all experiencing the same thing. And when we get a chance to talk and to share, it helps us work on our own social emotional learning skills, and it helps us know how to better navigate these situations with our children. Now, the one piece that we didn't yet get talking about is about the relationship pieces. And just like in the opening, you heard that the families are the first foundation for our children. We are the ones who help them see what a healthy relationship looks like and sounds like and feels like. Because when they go off to school, when they go off into the world, we hope that what we've shown them will set a foundation so that they can apply that in life. And so here, I'm the oldest of 4, and we're all within 4 years of each other, and we are really close. And this is what I wanted from my boys. And so I was so proud of Jared coming home, having written an essay when he was asked, who is your superhero? And he said, my brother. And I know it's hard to read here, but here's a couple pieces that jumped out. He always cares for me and he helps me. He sees that I'm stressed out and he wants to help me move along. And specifically what he's talking about is in 5th grade, a math problem that I could not solve. And I felt like I should have the answers as a mom, but I didn't have the answers. And I'm like, you need to ask your brother when he gets home. But that they trust each other and that he's by his side. And now that Ethan is in college, I know that they have conversations on the phone, and I know that Jared calls him for advice, and that's what we want. And I love seeing in here that, yes, it's okay to tell our kids that they have the wrong answers, and it's okay that we sometimes don't have the answers, or that we might give them the wrong answers too. It's showing that we're human and that we're wanting to learn and grow as well. The thing is that we can help them build those healthy relationships and give them all those key characteristics: somebody who cares for you, somebody who stands by you, somebody who empathizes, somebody who treats you well. But we know when they go out into life, they're going to experience conflict, and they're going to face people who don't treat them well, who don't show them the respect that they deserve. And this was what Jared came back to me in middle school with. He was telling me about how there was a girl on his bus that he thought was his friend, but when she got around her other friends, it was really nasty to him. And he was very confused because he was getting conflicting signals. And so this is a good time to talk to our children about healthy boundaries and what a healthy relationship looks like and how to respond when people are not treating them well. And I said to Jared, you know, we have people who are acquaintances in our lives, we have people who are friends, and we have people who are our best friends. And you thought that this girl was one of your closer best friends, and she showed you that she doesn't always treat you well. And so it's okay to move her away from you, maybe out into the friend zone or out into the acquaintance zone, because you need to set a healthy boundary for what you know you deserve in a relationship. And so this is hard, but how can we have and open up these conversations? And I found that as they got older, it was easier to have these conversations while we were having a meal together, whether that's breakfast or lunch or dinner, whether it's we're in the car, because they can look off to the side and we can talk and we know that they're hearing us as long as they don't have their headsets in. One of the last ones that I want to talk to you about is we talked about perseverance and how do we help our children set and achieve those goals. We know that goal setting is going to be one of the foundational skills in life. And I have to be honest with you, this is one skill set that I am not all that great at, because we know we have a big goal, but then we need to set the small goals in between. And I tried to be funny about this kind of story because the boy's father and I went to Penn State for our undergrad, and we raised the boys watching the Penn State football games, which are happening today. And they were all about Penn State and we want to go there. And so their goal in life for a while was our goal in life for them. We wanted them to be able to go to Penn State. But there comes a time when we realize that our goals for our children are not necessarily their goals. And if they have a goal like wanting to go into perhaps the Air Force or the military, or wanting to go on to a vocational technical education, or perhaps wanting to go to college, let's help them figure out what they need to do in order to get there. And having an understanding that they can draw upon their strengths to help them be successful. So Julian's dad, my husband, didn't go to college. He works as a sheet metal worker and helps install large heating and ventilation systems in children's hospitals. And so there's a specific skill set that he learned to develop so that he could be really good and achieve his goal. And so how do we help our children understand that those little steps along the way are what helps add up to the big parts? And if it doesn't work out or they're not achieving one of those little steps, reflect on what happened. What were some of those challenges? What could we do differently next time? And pick up and keep moving forward. So I'd like you to think about what might be one of your children's greatest dreams or goals or wishes for their life. And it could be something because they're younger. Some of the more popular things are wanting to be a superhero or wanting to be a firefighter or a policeman or a teacher. What is something that is a dream of your child's? Maybe it's that they want to learn how to ride their bike without training wheels. Maybe it's that they want to be able to attend a certain camp in the summertime where they can develop leadership skills. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that we're looking at how do we help our students make those, or our children make those responsible, caring decisions. Oh my gosh, to be a chef, giraffes in Africa, I would love to be able to do that. A video game designer, that's what Jared wants to do right now. So when it actually came time to decide what are we going to do, with college, Ethan decided he wants to be an engineer, and Penn State wasn't his place. He looked at all of the different data, the resources, what were the advantages of Villanova versus Penn State, and he ended up selecting Villanova. And it was the best decision for him. And so it's laying out what's all of our information and what is best for you. So I'm going to skip over those 2 slides, but here's the point that I really want to get home for us, is that you are the first person, the first caregiver to help establish those foundational skills with your children. It is us who get to help our children spread their wings and fly. And we're not expected to be perfect. Please know that. But we're working on that journey with our kids. And the more that we can learn from each other and learn more about what their hopes, their dreams, their strengths are, we can navigate that journey with them. And I know that I mentioned before, this is not easy work. And oftentimes we want to go hide away and take a breath. It's okay to hide away and take a 5-minute break. Because when we get a chance to disconnect, to think, to reflect, sometimes we get these little notes that remind us that we're doing a good job. This was a note from Jared while I was in the bathroom one day taking a 5-minute break for myself. He slid this under the door to me, and I still have it, and I keep it close to my heart. Social emotional learning. It's who we are and what we do. It's how we interact and support our kids through the ups and through the downs, letting them know that they are not alone. And so thank you for your time, your attention, your willingness to get involved in the chat. I look forward to getting a chance to talk with you more during our sessions. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Krista, for joining us today. It was such a pleasure to hear your perspective as a parent. We value your feedback, and I've just popped in a poll for you to complete about this session. A recording of this session will also be available on the OCPS Families YouTube channel. A link to the OCPS Families YouTube channel will be placed in the chat box. So take a moment to complete the poll. And then our first session will begin at 9:50. We look forward to having you join us in the next session.